What's up, guys? We got a new game with the black pieces. We're climbing, we're 1169. Our opponent, Karubiu, is 1120. Slowly moving up the ranks, approaching 1200. And they're not gonna... Okay, they do make a move. That's good. They go e4. We can go d6, play a pierce. He goes d4, taking control of the center. We bring our knight out, develop a minor piece towards the center. He goes knight c3, defending the pawn that I just attacked, developing a minor piece. We can go g6, getting ready to fianchetto our bishop. These are the standard moves of the perk. He develops his bishop, attacks the knight, loses a little bit of control over the b2 square. Because he brought his bishop out, he might be trying to castle long. So I'm going to go c6, which prepares a future b5, b4, in case he castles on the queen side. He pushes e5. This is very early to be pushing through e5. It threatens my knight and my center. The drawback is it's kind of early and he's still undeveloped. So I'm going to take the pawn. And then he takes the pawn, and that opens up the queen. So this attacks my knight, offers a queen trade. If we take his queen, we develop his rook. So instead, let's move our knight into the center. That's a move. That way, because we don't want him to take our queen and move our king. We definitely don't want that. But we also don't want to develop his rook. And we also don't want to lose the knight. So those three things, if I put them together, knight d5. He develops a minor piece. This pressures the bishop. We can't go here because our queen would be hanging. Okay, so our knight's under attack. If we move it, again, he takes our queen. That's not too thrilling. So we can try something else. Let's protect our knight in this unorthodox way. We're not really going to be, we don't really want to push the e-pawn anyway because we're going to fianchetto. So putting the bishop here may look weird, and he has stuff like this, but it shouldn't be a problem. I'll have time to protect with another piece, right? Or maybe if I go here, he goes here, I can castle, but then I ruin my structure, so maybe not. Okay, so let's see. What do we have here? We could probably develop another minor piece. Is this a move? Potentially, but my king's not safe yet, so it's a bit awkward. I'm going to put a knight here. What this does is it prepares, well, A, it pressures the pawn. B, it prepares to add another defender, and also it blocks the trade. So now I can move my knight. Like I could take this and he can't queen trade. So that's something to think about. So now if I take his knight, he can't take my bishop because I get a queen. So if I get a knight, he has to take back my knight, ruining his pawn structure. But then I would pick up a bishop. So if I take his knight, does he have any intermediate moves? I get a knight, his queen is hit. He doesn't have any checks. He can't attack my queen except by this. And if he moves the queen, I'll still take a second piece. So because his bishop is undefended, that allows all of this tactics to work. And if you look at any of the non-pawn pieces, like of mine, my rook is undefended, but he can't get to it. If you look at all of his pieces, the bishop's the only one undefended. So let's take the knight. Now if his queen wasn't here, let's say it was over, this wouldn't come with tempo. So he could take the bishop in response. Or if he took the bishop and then attacked our queen, something like that, he could do it. But just the way it is, okay, so he takes our piece, but now his queen's hanging. So I'm just going to take the queen, and the game is over. He takes back, but it's a piece for a queen, and now I take this, so not even. So it's just a free queen. I'm up a full queen. His compensation is these doubled pawns, which is worth, I don't know, 0.6 of a pawn is my guess. So he's down 9, he's up 0.6, so he's down 8.4. I just made all that up, obviously, but that's how I look at it, right? So now I just want to get my king safe. There's also this pin here, but he can add pressure, except by doubling, which takes 2 tempies, you know, so I have time to castle. Let's develop our piece. We're not actually threatening because the knight's pinned, but it does apply long-term pressure. Doesn't have to be now. Immediate gain. So he moves a pawn. This threatens nothing. The drawback is it's a complete waste of time. He needs to get his rook in the game, which is much more powerful than the c-pawn. So now I'm going to castle. And I'm just going to untangle these two guys, like a queen c7, take the pawn, something like this. And there you go. So nice and easy. He lost the queen. We get black again, but now we're against Rusi Mura, who's almost 1300, the highest rated person I think we faced. 1262. They start with 1d4, knight c3, some Jobava London style stuff. Okay, I developed my knight, and now I'm going to immediately strike the center with c5, not giving him time to do whatever setup. Well, he still does it anyway, apparently, but I was going to say not giving him time to do this setup. Now let's see. If I take the pawn and he goes in for the kill, he's coordinating. It's the whole point of the Jobava London style setup. But I didn't move my d pawn. Like, you play the Jobava London, you know, when black plays d5 and this diagonal's open. But if I go here and he jumps his knight in and I just play, let's say, d6, cutting off the coordination, he can win his pawn back, but then maybe I can even fork him. But anyway, I'm going to take the pawn and tell him, I challenge you. Okay, he doesn't do any of that. He just brings his queen out. I thought this gives me a free tempo. And he has no checks, so I'm going to get the free tempo. And now his queen moves back. And now it's my turn. So I'm liking what's happening. I could put a pawn in the center. I also could put it, I could move this 1 or this 2. If I move it 2, he has these types of ideas. I could move it 1 and then fianchetto and play this type of system. That seems reasonable. Otherwise, if I move it 2 and he goes here, then I could do this, and that would be very devastating. Maybe 2 is more principled. You could have gone 1, because this, you know, opens up the diagonal and all, so on and so forth. I want to go here, but he's going to go to the square where he wants to go anyway. I think I should go here and stop any ideas, and also when I push, he won't be able to go anywhere but back home. I'm going to throw this move in. You could develop, right, because I'm not fully developed. He moves a pawn, which opens the diagonal for the bishop and defends this square, so now I can't push. But I can start developing my pieces. I can pin this knight, and I'm going to do that. Pinning this knight gives me access, more control over this square because it's defended, and this square. So now I can still maybe try to push. And so he develops a piece to the center. So all of his minor pieces are developed. I'm still 2 moves away from my minor pieces being developed. But what's the drawback? The drawback is he has all these pieces in the center, but no pawns in the center. And when you don't have pawns in the center, your opponent's pawns can go forward in the center. So, for example, if I take his knight and he takes back, and I go e5, I'm hitting the bishop, which is defended My pawn's defended by the knight. He moves the bishop. Don't I have a fork, queen, and bishop? And if I take, and he takes with the pawn, and I go here, and he moves back, it's still a good position, but if I push, he now has a pawn there. So what if we don't take the knight, and we just push anyway, because the knight's pinned? Well, again, he has to move back, and then you can push forward, and that seems devastating. So in light of that, let's put both of our pawns in the center. This enables development with tempo. Okay, so his piece took our pawn. And I don't need to explain the rest. He thought it was hit twice and only defended once, but clearly the knight's pinned. So when I take this, you can't take back. You lose your queen. Resigns. 1300. Get him out of here. Okay, so we have another d4 game against Mitra Mai, 12-15. They go e3 on move 2. If you're going to do this, try to get... I mean, you could get your bishop out first, right? I guess you can fianchetto it or something, but you're closing your pawn chain before your piece is out. You might as well just develop your knight before you do that. Like, there's no reason to do this move on move 2. Unless you're going for this weird stonewall attack setup. We'll see what he does. I'm going to go, as usual, you see me go c5 on move 2. It's kind of a fun move that attacks the center. And he pushes in like a Benoni style, I want to say. Okay, so now he's pushing. It's very principled. The threat, he's gaining space. The drawback, yeah, the more space you have, the bigger responsibility you have. I think I'm gonna go b5 and sacrifice a pawn. And it's kind of like the Benko Gambit. So how does that one go? Oh, you can't analyze on this board. Okay, never mind. So he takes the pawn, and now in Benko Gambit style, we do have this check, but then he comes here and protects the bishop. We're gonna go a6. It's very weird looking. It's not the same, but it still looks fun. Because he spent a turn going e3 and not e4 in one move, so now he's just up a pawn though for no reason, so it's kind of funny. We're gonna do this unorthodox move, which is e6. A lot of times in these Benoni Benkos or whatever, they go d6 and they go g6 and they fianchetto and they try to use this diagonal. But I like to go e6 instead. It's a completely different type of game, but it's, like I said, it's still fun. So, he develops a piece. It eyes the center, prepares castling. No real drawback. We can take this pawn. He'll take with the bishop. But it's an interesting. He's up a pawn, but maybe I could try that. Takes. Develop the knight. He jumps his knight in. I fianchetto my bishop. I get checkmated. So if I take his knight, he takes my rook. It's interesting. I'm just gonna develop though. Oh, whoops. This walks into d6. That was dumb. I should have taken. I wanted to try something different. Because normally I just take. But yeah, you can't do that because of this, obviously. So hopefully he doesn't see it. He sees it. I guess the good thing about this is it relieves the pressure. The bad thing is he's got this pawn, and if you can't win it, it's going to be a big problem. So he can't defend it the next turn. I'm noticing that. So queen b6 is another way to attack it immediately. Twice. If I can win this pawn, that's really good for me, because if I can move whatever pieces here and then play d4 and get these 3 pawns, I'll have a crazy good center compared to white. And I'll get my pawn back, so I'll just be much better. I played this a little funky, but it's okay. This type of opening, you really need to like experiment, get a feel for, maybe watch some videos if you're gonna play something like this. And then even when you memorize the lines, if they go anything off, like he goes e3 early, like he did in this game, your lines don't work because every little change changes everything. And so you just kind of have to play and feel for it, the initiative and sacks and stuff. So he moves his pawn, saying that if I take his pawn, he's gonna fork me. Look at this guy. That's fair. The drawback, isn't this pawn hanging now? Or am I walking into something again? I don't see it because my king is very safe with these pawns right now. Very safe from any type of minor piece sacrifices. That's why like playing e6 on move 1 like in the French is so annoying. They try to checkmate those people, right? I mean, if they castle, you can do it, but if they just keep their king in the center, it's very hard to get to. Whereas if you play e5 on move 1, you instantly give them access to your position with this diagonal. Okay, so he develops a minor piece. This protects the pawn. Maybe that was the idea of his pawn sacrifice, to get the bishop out. But not only did you give your pawn back, it was also a central pawn that you gave back. So you want to keep this one because it's a wedge pawn, I get it. But now this knight is a third attacker, so you still can't defend it. So it still doesn't make sense. So I'm going to develop with a tempo, ready to castle. And now I would go so far as to say I'm winning. Weird opening, probably work. Like if you turn on the engine, you'll see um, like all of this stuff. This sacking the pawn, e6, walking into d6. Like I'm worse, and like I'm fine, I'm better, winning. So a lot of times you play this opening. I mean, this isn't a specific opening, but you play like you sack a pawn on b5, let's say, um, and you play a pawn down, sometimes 2 pawns down. But you have to expect that when you pick it, right? So I'm gonna take with the knight because it attacks this, the queen attacks this, and my knight was kind of loose over here by itself. He jumps a knight in. This threatens nothing. A little pressure here for some cheapo he's gonna go for. Or maybe when I take this, he's gonna recapture and protect. That's fine with me though. I'm gonna do that, and then he's gonna take, and then I'm just gonna drop my queen back to a very safe square on the dark squares, and my queen will act as a replacement dark square bishop. I have a light square, and this will be the dark square, so they'll control all the colors, whereas he doesn't have any bishops, so his knights are just short range little, you know, midget pieces. So he gives this check, which I didn't even consider or see because I guess my mind didn't care. It doesn't do anything but removes my castling rights, but he has no bishops. He has nothing in the game except this knight. I guess you could say the queen, but if I attack the knight, he'll have to move it again. Like if I just go king up, he can't do any, I'll have to move it. So if he takes the bishop, yeah, that's going to be a super powerful bishop, but whatever. I'll be up a pawn. And my king is still relatively safe. I can always play f6 in case he ever shifts to a dark square diagonal. Okay, so he just hangs the knight. I'm gonna take it, which offers the queen trade. There's no queen checks because it's on the light diagonal. So there's no tricks. He might have one check, but I don't care. Okay, this check, whatever. And now when I play d5, it's just, I mean, it's already game over. I'm up a piece, but to solidify. Okay, now if I push, he's attacking this pawn. So you always start with the question, what is the threat, right? So that's the threat. Also, maybe he wants to jump in here. Now that I don't have any dark square control, maybe he wants to take advantage. I don't really care. I'm going to play d5 anyway and let him take this pawn, just so he's not in my position. Okay, you took your pawn, but now I still have this very strong chain, and your knight's not doing anything. So now I just get to develop my pieces. Right, knight out, rook out. I'll push the pawn and bishop out, maybe something like that. Okay, so he pushes a pawn. This threatens maybe to push, but I don't mind if he pushes because I'll ignore it probably. I'm noticing we could hit the knight only because it doesn't have many squares. Although that's kind of asking for some trouble, a little early for that. I'm going to increase the maximum number of squares my pieces control, would be this move. So he defends the pawn, but he has to waste a tempo to do it. Okay. Now I'm going to ask what the knight wants to do. He took away this square. He could go back here, but then it's suspicious. And I just need to get my bishop and rook in the game. So maybe fianchetto, maybe push the pawn and bring it here. Probably that. And when you have a weakness like a6, one of the plans is to get rid of your weakness by just pushing it and trading. That way he can't target it in the future. So he moves his knight here in the center. But now I can move my knight in. But I don't have to because this actually controls his knight. So I'm just going to continue my development. I'm going to go here, which again may look weird, but it does two things. One, puts my bishop on a much better diagonal, so it's not blocked by the central pawn. And two, I was trying to get rid of the weakness, but now he says you're not going to get rid of it. I'm cementing it. Drawback of his moves, it weakens this square a little bit in the future, but I have to move my rook immediately. I don't want to move it into a tempo move, and I don't want to block my diagonal. So I'm going to stay on dark squares. Okay, so now he moves his rook over. Maybe he wants to play this saying you're pinned, but again, I'll just ignore it. Don't really care. And now we get to develop our last minor piece, and now it finally controls a bunch of light squares. We're ready to put our rook on c8, target the pawn. And now I kind of feel like I played some type of caro-kann. Okay, so he jumps his minor piece in. This puts a tempo on the bishop, a little pressure on the position, because I don't have dark square control. This is fine. I have nowhere to really move it that I would like, so I'm just going to bring in my last piece. Oh, this is a blunder actually, if I do that, because he could take this pawn, because my king is pinned. It's interesting. This protects the pawn, but if he kicks the pawn, then I'm not sure what you're doing. If I kick the knight, he has to go back or take my bishop. That might work. So kick the knight, takes, c4. I can just ignore it. So let's do that. Let's kind of force him to either take or let us take. It gets his last minor piece off the board. It's the only piece that's doing anything because it's the only piece that's working on the dark squares, which is harder for me to control, right? Because I don't have anything controlling dark squares except this knight. Okay, so he does take, and now the only pressure on my position is this pin. But it doesn't matter because even if he plays this and takes, I take back, there's no more pressure. So he pushes trying to create something, but the drawback is I can just push past and my center is beautiful. And now if he pushes back, I can continue pushing, right? Because it has the support of this e5 pawn that wasn't here a turn ago. My rook's looking dumb though, so I need to improve my rook. He's trying to maybe double. Doesn't make sense because of the solidifying move. F6. Oh, I guess he's doubling this way. Again, doesn't really make sense because I just create this pawn chain. He can go c3 and try to break it down, but if he takes and I take, is he gonna sack a rook for the knight, right? So it's still protected in that sense. And if he doesn't go here this turn and I jump my knight in here, if he ever pushes, oh no, I can't push past because he could take my knight. Whatever. He pushes past. What does this threaten? Well, it exchanges the idea of breaking down my structure for the idea of getting a 3-on-1 counterplay. But the drawback is he has 10 points of material staring into nothing, and it gives up full control over this square, and your pawns are never going anywhere. My one pawn will stop all three, considering my king's in the middle. So now he's just going back and forth. He literally has nothing to do. He's trying to push this pawn. I do want to put a piece here and blockade it, but maybe my knight's the best piece there. I mean, the knight's pretty good where it is, supporting this pawn, but maybe it's better here because it attacks the pawn and can jump here. Oh, I only have a minute. Not again. So I'm going to do this, stop the advance of both his pawns, and put my rook here. Oh, this guy gave me time. Black plus 15 twice. This guy gave me 30 seconds. He's now pushing pawns, and this doesn't threaten anything. It just wastes time. He's going to lose on the queen side. So this half of the board is the only half that matters. You don't have to do anything on the other side, no matter how much. Even if he pushes, until he gets here, you ignore him. So now he's just protecting what was attacked, but now I double attack it. And the game is, I mean, it was over when I won a piece, but now it's over. Because over is the thing. I'm just going to come in and take the pawn, protected by the knight. Because he has nothing to do but shuffle back and forth. That's why there's no need to explain his moves. And he should be resigning soon. He knows what's happening at this point. Alright, we take. He attacks the knight. Nothing's happening here. We're going to go here and here because it's protected, which allows us to move the knight. It's very troll move, like a very troll move, but it's a good move. Again, I told you can ignore this because on any recaptures you always recapture back. He pushes, that's why this would have been a bad pre-move if you pre-moved, but you can take or you can block. I just block saying nothing to do here, buddy. And there's no piece sacks because all your stuff's in the way. So if you take and he takes, you at the very least open up a file for him. So he can't move the pawns, but he can, let's say, put a rook on h7. It's not going to matter here, but it may matter in one of your other chess games. So when you block it like this, the only drawback of that is you're leaving an extra pawn. So if you ever can scoop this, you might be in trouble. Okay, so this double attacks offers a rook trade as well. Okay, so I'm the only one with a piece, which stops the queen. And now he's gonna resign soon, probably, hopefully. I'm just gonna put the knight here so he can never even queen, right? Alright, I'm just gonna queen. I was gonna take everything, but because there are viewers, In light of your time, I'll checkmate him instead. Okay. Nice. We're 1190. I'm gonna say good game, well played, since he's being nice to me. All right. 3 good games. We keep climbing to 1200. Send me your rapid games.